Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Before we get started, I wanted to ask you if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button before you leave. And I'd also love it if you'd leave a comment before you leave today, too. I appreciate your input and your suggestions and your ideas and your constructive criticism. I like that stuff. Also, all of that stuff helps to get my channel promoted by YouTube, so thanks in advance for that. So during a pandemic, I did a lot of baking because what else was there to do, you know? So I learned how to make some pie crust and things like that, and I made an apple pie or pumpkin pie or two. And it just so happens that this month's theme over on my Patreon is kitchen themed jewelry. So I give them a different theme each month to make a piece based on, and it's interesting to see what everybody comes up with. But I'm going to do mine today, and at least I'm going to give it a shot. I've never made something like this before. And I'm going to do kind of a pie pendant with a rolling pin above it, and we'll see how that works out. I picked out this stone. I'm not even sure what it is. It's looks like some kind of quartz that has some iron staining to it or something like that, but it looks like it'll make good apple pie filling to me. So a couple of things about it. We're going to do a back mount on this one. I'm going to be weaving a lattice for the top of it, which will be challenged. I've never tried to do that before, so we'll see how that comes out. And but yeah, that should be a good project. We'll see how it turns out. Before we get started, I wanted to thank my subscribers on YouTube. We just passed 5,900, which is awesome. We're almost to 6,000. That's great, you guys. Thank you. I appreciate all of your support and your kind words, and it's just nice to know that there's such a good community out here. I also wanted to thank my patrons over on Patreon. They are paying for my premium content, and without them, this probably wouldn't be possible. So thank you guys for all of your financial support, as well as just being the cool group that you are over there. I really enjoy interacting with you guys. With that being said, let's get started on this project. I think it should be fun. All right, here's my little sketchbook that I use to draw up my designs. These are available on my merch store if you're interested. I like them because they have the grid pattern on them, which helps me to keep things sort of proportional, because I'm not very good at that. So, all right, this is my idea here. This is the stone, and I thought the color looked like apple pie filling a little bit after it's been cooked. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and create a pie crust, basically, with an open back, and then I'll pop this in there. Be sort of a side view of it. We'll have some little tabs on the back that we can bend in to hold the stone in place. But in addition to that, I'm going to connect this to the handles of a rolling pin, and then connect some jump rings up here for a split chain to attach to. And we'll see how that turns out. I've never made a rolling pin either, so it'll be fun to see if we can do that. But to start with, I think probably start with the lattice here. I've cut some 14 gauge wire and flattened it out in the rolling mill. You could just pound it flat if you wanted to, but it made for kind of a nice thin strips for this lattice. So we'll see how that works. In the past, when I've tried to weave stuff together, I was trying to do it when everything was loose, and that's near impossible. So the first thing I'm going to do is, on these things, is I got this little bit thicker one, and I'm going to solder them on top and underneath. I'll spend a little more time getting them symmetrical and stuff when I get them ready to solder, but this is the basic idea. We'll see how many I need. I don't think I'll need more than I cut already. I think I cut 8 or 9 of them, besides this extra one here. That's a different size. I'm going to want a piece of pie after I finish this one, I think. So basically I'll solder those onto this piece, and then it should make it easy to weave pieces in and out one by one and add them in and make them go over and under like this. So so that's the first step. I'll get this set up on the pad and then we'll solder it together. I think what I'll do first is I'm gonna do what's called sweat soldering, and I'm gonna pre-melt some solder onto this one, and then I'll just flip it over and lay it on top of these ones right at the end. I should be able to heat the whole thing up to the point where that reflows and sticks to those ones, as long as we get everything fluxed all right. I'm gonna make sure that's all. I'll double check to make sure that's all lined up how I want it before I start. And then we can add the ones on top, I think. I thought about just soldering right to the edge of the wire, but I think that might make it harder to feed them through. I've had that happen a couple of times on this new solderite pad that I got, where it pops. There's a little air pocket or something in there that pops. Never had that happen on these before. I'm not sure what's different about this one. Alright, let's give that a try. You could do the same thing and sweat it on those, on the top of that or on the ends of those, but I'll just do my regular pick soldering on this one. I'm not going to use this first one as part of the crust, because that's just really to hold it in place, and it's actually a 12 gauge I think, so tuck this one down in here. It's a little challenging to hold it in place when you're doing this. I think something that might help would be a little clamp to hold this. Let's see if I can find a little clamp. See if we grab that, if that'll kind of keep things in place maybe a little better. think the key to this is going to be to pinch it together like this so that you get some waviness going on, not just the warp but the weft. Either way, I think you want them both to be giving a little bit, both the cross one and the other one. You notice that I pick solder things. If you're interested in learning how to pick solder, I have a video about that. That's one of those skills that I would recommend learning because it kind of pushes you to a new level. Gives you some abilities you wouldn't have had otherwise. Okay, so I soldered the second one that I put on there first, and then I started squishing it so that it made the up and down bends that it needed to kind of fit together nicely. It jumped over on me a little bit. Not sure why. Oh, this time I'd save myself some trouble and pre-bend those little bends. Should have thought of that first. But that's the fun part about this, is you always figure out ways to do things better after you try it, you know. Oops. Once again, Chad drops the ball. Solder ball, anyway. I might do one more just to be safe after this one. Alright, I finished up my little lattice here, and I'm gonna, I went ahead off camera and I took a piece of 18 gauge strip about 5 millimeters tall, and I made it so it just barely is bigger than the stone here. And what I was going to try and do, I was going to use this for the outside dish for my pie. Smooth out my solder joint there a little bit. And let's see if I can't kind of taper this outwards a little bit. There's things falling off the table over there. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to color this purple so I can scratch a line that I'll be able to see pretty well on the inside, right on the inside here. I think this is the fun part when you're trying to figure out how to do something that you've never done. All right, let's get in there. So let me find a little T-pin. I'm kind of like trace a line because I'm going to be soldering a wire on the inside of this in order to stop that from coming out the top. And also that's going to be a spot for the lattice to fit down on top of. And then I probably will put another piece of round wire on there to kind of round it out at the top, and then do some dimples to make it look like thumbprints from a pie crust. But what I just did here was, you should be able to see there's a line scratch. That's about where I want the ring to sit. So I think I'm going to use probably a little bit of 14 gauge. That's pretty close. I think I'm gonna go ahead and solder that, and then I might file it at a taper on the outside just a little bit so it drops down slightly more. Look, it's got kind of like a downward taper. Let's see how it fits now. That looks pretty good. Does that look like pie filling? It kind of does to me. We actually planted an apple tree and it's producing apples for the first time this year, so I'm going to try and make an apple pie out of it. Alright. So, what I think I want to do is I'm going to cut out I think I'm going to cut this out. I made it bigger than it needed to be so that I could dome it a little bit. But I don't think I need to dome it a huge amount, just enough to make it look like a pie. Okay, so let's grab that dapping block again. I don't think I want to dome it that steep though, so I'm going to get my wooden one. That's looking pretty pie-like. But like I said, clearly I'm going to have to trim that off a lot, so. Do a little bit of filing till it fits right in there. Okay, so I filed this down until it fit just in there. So now I'm going to solder it in. I'm just going to pick a little bit of solder on the outside. Starting to look a little bit like a pie. Okay, let's see. So I think, like I said, I want to put a lip around the outside here. So I need to make a piece that's just the right size. And then I think I'm going to Dremel this kind of flat right around the very edge there so that it'll just sit right there. I can solder it on. So let me see if I can make a circle that's just about the right size. That's about how I wanted it. So I'm just going to take the Dremel and take off that edge a little bit on the top, right along on the top here, and get it flat so I can just plop that on there. Be right back. So I got that cleaned up around the outside edge. I just used an abrasive white wheel. Let's see. Let's cut a little bit more solder. Alright. A little bit more. Okay. Now let's flip this guy over on top. So really the last thing I need to do is I need to create some little tabs that I can bend over the stone and back. And so I cut some 22 gauge pieces here. And I'm going to try, I guess I'm going to try and just mount them right on the edge there. That's going to be a little tricky. Let me give it a try and we'll see what happens. There's probably a way to do this that I'm not thinking of, but we'll just do it the hard way. Alright, I'm gonna cool that off and see if those are on there good. So now I need to make a rolling pin. Just for the sake of time, I went ahead and soldered the central pin of what's going to be the rolling pin to a piece of, I think it's 10 gauge round wire. This is 14 gauge. And I'll use this to shape some little handles for the rolling pin. And I have a second piece in here that I'll put on the other side once it's through the pin. But I guess I need to make a tube first, and I need to kind of have a feel for how long this rolling pin should be. I think it needs to be a little bit longer than the one I pictured here. So maybe I want these wires I'm going to solder to the outside of this to kind of join wherever I attach the chain ends to the handles of the rolling pin. And so I want them to line up nice like that. So that kind of dictates how big I'm going to make this rolling pin. And so I think I can make it just a little bit bigger than this. Let's just do 30 millimeters. 10, 20, 30. Right there. Now if you want to figure out how big of a rolling pin we want, maybe like that size. That seems about right for this size of a pie. If I want to get it to be about this size, I need to measure straight across this and find out how big this is. And it's about 7 millimeters. So if I do 7 times 3.14, 21.98. Okay. So that's how wide of a piece of tube we need to make us end up with a cylinder of the size that I want. I'm just going to spend a minute or two filing these nice and flat. Okay, I usually use these drill making pliers to kind of start making tubes. So you can use the table for leverage if you want. Sometimes that helps. What you're going to do is once they're pretty close together, then you can squeeze them this way and get those two ends together, generally. Alright, so I'm going to put an end on this, and then I will put another end on it, but first, before I put the second end on, I'm going to drill a hole in the center of this one, because it's dangerous to solder hollow spaces closed completely because gases expand and contract. Probably the easiest way to do this would just be to sweat some solder on there and then plop this on top of it like that and just heat it till it flows. I'm going to drill a little hole in this, just a little bit bigger than 14 gauge wire. I drilled a hole in that, and I went ahead and sweat some solder onto this other piece here. So let's flux that and get that soldered on, and then I'll drill a hole in it. And then we'll start to assemble things, I think. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and trim this off, and then I'll drill the hole on this end as well. Okay, kind of see how everything's going to go together here. I did a little bit of manual shaping with the Dremel to make those look a little more like handles. But this thing's going to go kind of like this. The last thing I'm going to do before I put the pin on is I'm going to solder a jump ring facing the same direction as these guys. So, and then we'll try and solder that last little solder joint. Alright, I think I'm going to make those jump rings out of 18 gauge probably. I think just to be safe, I'm going to use easy solder for this last solder joint. I don't use it very often, but there's an occasion now and again where it's useful. This will be one of the few times where I'm not spraying the flux on too. I'm going to paint a little bit on. Just use a toothpick. Still got movement, that's what I wanted. Okay, so I'm going to throw this in the pickle, clean it up, and then we'll finish it up. A couple of things happened. Mostly, I kept having one of these little tabs break off on me. I just couldn't get a good solder joint on one of them, so I just cut the other one off on the bottom, and I decided to kind of hammer this in a little bit over the lower part of the stone, and then just use the upper two tabs, which worked out fine. So, and I'll clean those up a little bit better before I get pictures, but I think it'll look nice under good light, because then you'll be able to see that there's something underneath the lattice. It's a little dim in here right now, so, but I like it in general. I think it's pretty cool. Definitely haven't made one of these before, so hope you enjoyed it. I'll take some better pictures of it and put it at the end of the video. Okay, well that was the apple pie and rolling pin pendant. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, make sure to hit the like button before you leave, and I'd ask you, if you enjoyed this content, maybe you should check out some other videos of mine. I have over 200, and there's lots of content here for various different levels, and I think it's a pretty good channel. So consider watching a few more and maybe subscribing, and that way you won't miss any new ones. And I put out 3 per week, so one on Tuesday, one on Thursday, and one on Saturday. Thanks again for coming. Don't forget to check the video description for various links that are relevant, like my Patreon, my merch store, buy me a coffee, or even my website where you can buy jewelry. So thanks for stopping by. Take care. Happy silversmithing.